is obviously one of those. It is overwhelmingly the most important institution of socialization. It's where we learn our roles, get our sense of self, what kind of person you are, for good and for bad. We know that children also get abused. We know that early exposure in life has impact on them, even just physically and brain development, let alone on their roles. So the family is overwhelmingly the most important institution of socialization. Another one, which has also been around since we have been a species, are peers. Peers. People you hang around with. This tends to be particularly important once you reach the age of adolescence. There's a lot of evidence that the most powerful predictor of your attitudes, values, and beliefs once you're at adolescence is not the attitudes, values, and beliefs of your parents, but the attitudes, values, and beliefs of your peers. Now, it is still the case that parents are very important in this period of time. And you can make a case that parents are even more important for peers for the simple reason that parents help choose your peers by where you live. And it is not unusual for a parent who has a child who's starting to hang around bad kids to do what? Move. Get them away from them. Move to another part of the city. And that continues to give parents a lot of importance. But at adolescence, the standard line is peers are particularly important. Now, religion has also been around since the get-go, extremely important, particularly for our moral values and beliefs. Religion. Then, now we start crossing the line. These next institutions of socialization really develop only with the Industrial Revolution, at least for most people. Yes, during the agrarian era, remember, yes, there were the aristocracy that would be educated in some kind of university, or the priesthood would go there to learn Latin. But that was not for the majority of people. With the Industrial Revolution, the school becomes important as an agency of socialization to our economic roles. How come? How come we now have schools where mommy and daddy used to be the ones teaching you how to work, how to be a mom? That's pretty obvious, right? How come?
Mommy and daddy are working.
Mommy and daddy are working, and people are working at what?
Factories, not
and much more complicated roles than they used to be. If you're living on a farm, you learn farming from dad. Where are you going to learn to be an accountant? How about an engineer? A lawyer? A doctor? You going to pick that up from mommy? No. Schools. An industrial society demands much more complex work activities, and therefore we need institutions to train us for that. And then finally, the mass media. Be afraid. Yeah, there's concern on the part of sociologists, but actually here, particularly psychologists, in the impact of mass media on our development. As the mass media has grown more sophisticated. Now again, this is with the Industrial Revolution. I mean, probably the first clue to a piece of mass media was maybe a visiting theater troupe that would come to a village. The invention of the printing press might have produced a newspaper. But so it's really with the Industrial Revolution we started seeing that radio first. Then movies. Well, probably movies, then radio. I'm not sure exactly what's on that one. TV, and particularly now video games. These are highly immersive forms of involvement. TV, first black and white, then color, large screens, now 3D, now video games, first-person shooter. And the concern here is the kind of roles taught to people, children, going through this stuff tend to be very, very stereotyped. What are men? First-person shooters. What are women? Assume the position. These are pretty stereotyped notions about masculinity. And what's equally frightening is the amount of time modern children spend in contact to mass media. If you simply look at any kind of contact time and count like I'm doing right now, there's mass media, it's on a screen, or the little DVD clip I may show later on or something like that, or the time you spend playing your video game with your friends or online with somebody on the other side of the country, they're spending more contact time with that stuff than even with their parents. Especially once they reach the age of late childhood. I don't know if you guys remember, around here about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a blackout. The electricity went down for an entire afternoon and evening, disappeared. I discovered there were a hell of a lot more kids in my neighborhood than I ever knew. Because all of a sudden the kids that were at home on the video were outside doing what kids used to do. Play. You know, there are things called sunlight. You know, they're running around, getting exercise. This is also probably one of the reasons for one of the biggest problems right now with children's health in the United States is what? Obesity. How come? Because they're not running around. You know, they got really big, powerful thumbs. Otherwise than that, okay, the impact of the mass media. Okay, any questions on that? Comments? Yeah.
What about social media? Would it be under institutions of socialization?
Yeah, that's becoming more and more important, obviously, as well. It gets more and more complicated and immersive. We are concerned that we're kind of losing the democratic debate. With social media, if you are a left-handed Lithuanian flute player, you can find other left-handed Lithuanian flute players on the line, and that's the only kind of people you will be socializing with. Versus, you got to come to terms with the people around you because you had no place else to hang out, and they may be of a different religion, they may be of a different ethnicity. This coupled with increasing neighborhood homogeneity, that is, more and more people live around other people just like them. Segregated neighborhoods. Now we're even getting more socially segregated by the use of those kinds of media. So it's a concern. It is definitely a concern. It's a very good point you bring up, though. Thanks. Yeah?
What about politics on social media? Like, because that affects kids a lot.
Politics in what sense? Exposure to or the ability to develop political connections? What are you talking about?
Kind of like just a one-sided argument where they're only seeing like
Yes.
one side of it, where
Exactly.
it's not the full story, and they're developing opinions about it that's completely not the wrong, or they're getting the wrong idea from that political.
Yes. That is also a big concern. You can see that, as you point out, in our politics. Our politics are growing more extreme. People on the left only listen to TV shows, watch things connected to their values. People on the right are doing the same thing, and we're finding less and less common ground. It used to be that everybody watched pretty much the same TV channels. You know, there were 3 TV channels, the same news shows everybody saw. Not anymore. You got the Fox News world, you got the MSNBC news world, and never the twain shall meet. And it's increasing the tendency towards political polarization. Yeah.
Does mass media have any kind of negative effects, such as being able to stay in contact with family?
You mean positive effects?
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, that's why people do it. They're not doing it to punish themselves, so they really, it's an advantage too. At this point, it's obvious, I'm emphasizing mostly the negative consequences of that, because I think the positive ones are pretty self-evident. Yeah, you can stay in contact with family and friends. You can maintain long friendships over long distances. You know, parents or dad who travels, or mom who travels, can stay in contact with the kids in ways unbelievable, impossible, even just 10, 15 years ago. So yeah, there's obviously incredible positive parts about that. We have exposure and availability of books, articles. I mean, while it's true, things are becoming more and more polarized because people are choosing to look and listen only to other people like themselves. Is there the greatest availability of wisdom and knowledge on the internet in human history? That all you have to do is have an internet access and you've got incredible resources. And most people don't use it. But at least it's there, so there is a lot of positive as well. Okay, any other comments before I move on? Okay, last, real quick. There are a series of stages that we go through in the course of our life. It's referred to as the life course. We start off in an industrial society. After the Industrial Revolution, we start off as babies. then we become children, then we become teens, then you're young adults, you're starting a family and that kind of stuff, and then you're middle aged, and you're starting to get close to retirement, and then you're elderly and you retire. Those are obviously the stages of our life that we go through. For us, it appears pretty self-evident. That's simply biology. You get older, you go through the stages. Not really. Well, yes and no. Once again, it's kind of a nature-nurture kind of issue. Yes, of course it is a matter of physical growth, but these stages are also what sociologists call socially constructed. Those stages exist not because of biology alone, but because society has created them. Because at least some of those stages, these stages here, did not exist, for example, before the Industrial Revolution. And there's one that's obvious, that is not, you cannot find in literature, you cannot find in painting, you cannot find in reference to a stage we currently have in an industrial society like our own. Go back 500 years, you can find no evidence of it. And not only is it not biology, this stage that we currently have is fighting against biology, denying the realities of biology. Which stage is that?
Young adult.
Pardon?
Young adult.
Nope.
Middle age.
Nope.
Adolescent.
Adolescent. What is an adolescent? A teenager. Who is what? A biological adult. That's easy to measure adulthood biologically. It's the ability to do what?
Reproduce.
It. With each other. Reproduce. A teenager, an adolescent, is a biological adult who is forced to play the role of a what?
Kid.
Child. Does that make any biological sense whatsoever? It's crazy biologically. You know, once you're 13, 14 years old, are your hormones screaming, reproduce? Yeah, but society says, no, 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 no. You're supposed to pretend like you're a child. And your body is saying, Is there any evidence of a teenager before the Industrial Revolution? No. And that's the simple proof of that right there. Them. What's the greatest love story in the English language? Romeo and Juliet. How old was Juliet?
14.
No, 13.
What?
Romeo was 14. Juliet was 13. Get this. When she met Romeo, was she already engaged to somebody else?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How come? Babies having babies? Nah. Because they recognize biology in ways that we don't today. They are ready to reproduce. Those are biological adults. You are pretending to be child. How many of you still live at home with mommy and daddy? Exactly. You know how crazy that is? What should you be doing? Having families, biologically. And notice something that's going to happen. We today have a lot of problems with people who delay childbirth. You'll find ironically, at your age, you'll be doing everything you can to keep from getting pregnant as a female. Or it's a joint enterprise. So, but now delay. We find more and more people. That is, you get your PhD, you delay until you get tenure. Now you decide at the ripe old age